Good afternoon. I am Judge Michael Warren of the Oakland County Circuit Court. More importantly, I am the proud father of a C-Home graduate who pounded on the table as a 10-year-old and started that celebration for America. That is now Patriot Week, 16 years ago. We have here Kevin Kiefsky and Kevin Rinke. We got two Kevins right now on the stage. Hopefully we'll be joined by another person, but we're going to introduce them at their appropriate time. So gentlemen, you can take your seats if you like. Before we get into the public forum section, we have a preliminary matter which is somewhat embarrassing to me, which is that the Oakland County Commissioners, I'm going to ask this question. Who knows what the Oakland County Commission is? Any students? All right, you have to educate. You're going to get a 30-second promo to explain what the Oakland County Commission is. One of the three of you, between the three of you, or all three of you if you want. But we have three outstanding commissioners, and they are a bipartisan grouping here. And we have Lenny Taylor, Ann Erickson-Galt, and Bob Hoffman. They want to make a quick presentation on Patriot Week. Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Lenny Taylor, and I am Oakland County Commissioner for District 18, which encompasses Southfield Township, Franklin Village, Beverly Hills, portions of Southfield, and portions of Bloomfield Charter Township. And on stage with me is Ann Erickson-Galt, and she'll tell you her district, and Bob Hoffman.
Hi, I'm Ann Erickson-Galt. I represent District 3, which is Hazel Park, Madison Heights, and part of Troy.
I'm Bob Hoffman, and I'm here with the two second-best county commissioners there are. And actually, just kidding. We have an incredible group over there, the Board of Commissioners. It's bipartisan. And one thing I can say very proudly is we're always civil to each other. We always respect each other. We disagree a lot, and we argue about different issues, but it's always about the issues. I represent District 7, which is the northwest part of Oakland County. We all represent about 70,000 people. And because I live in a rural district, I have a 200 square mile district where a lot of commissioners might have 36 square miles because of the denser population. But basically, we are like the board of directors for Oakland County, the legislative branch, and then of course the executive and judicial branch. And we, are protectors of the taxpayers. And the best thing about this job, I think, and I think everybody will agree with me, is that this is a great job to have to represent your constituents, because you're like a conduit between the citizens and every layer of government there is. And I'm proud to be a county commissioner, as my other commissioners are too. And I have a young son, and every couple of years when we'd run for re-election, people would say, "Bob, you ever thought about going to Lansing?" I go, "Yeah, on a field trip with my son Anthony." But I love this job, as they do, and I'm happy to represent Oakland County. Thank you.
And we promise we won't be long. We just have a proclamation that we'd like to present to Judge Warren. And I'll just read it briefly. Patriot Week 2025, honoring Patriot Week for 2025. Whereas across Oakland County and the nation, our country's history and founding principles serve as the cornerstone of civic education. And whereas in 2009, Oakland County Circuit Court Judge Michael Warren and his 10-year-old daughter, Leah, conceived the idea for Patriot Week to invigorate our appreciation and understanding of America's spirit and reflect on the ideals, documents, and historical figures that represent the United States, choosing key anchor dates for a nonpartisan week-long observation led by the duo to begin the week on September 11th, honoring nearly 3,000 Americans who lost their lives in 2001, and end on September 17th, Constitution Day. And
Whereas, as part of this celebration, we are encouraged to honor and embrace the first principles, key historical figures, founding documents, and other symbols of America. Each day of Patriot Week represents one of the first principles as outlined in the Declaration of Independence: revolution, the rule of law, the social compact, gender equality, racial equality, unalienable rights, and limited government. And whereas Patriot Week is marked annually with events that include remembrances, presentations, festivities, and lectures around the county, this year's observance features a tour of K through 12 schools across Southeast Michigan region, with Judge Warren serving as MC along with a renowned historical reenactor depicting Martin Luther King Jr. and Frederick Douglass. The Birmingham School District, notably Wiley E. Groves and Ernest W. Seaholm High Schools, graciously hosted the final stops of this multi-day celebration. And
whereas on this special occasion of Patriot Week, we proudly join in the festivities honoring our great nation and reflect on the cornerstone events and elements that strengthen and unite us. Now therefore, David T. Woodward, Chair of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, along with Commissioners Bob Hoffman, Michael Spiz, Lenny Taylor, and the entire Oakland County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim September 11th through the 17th, 2025, as Patriot Week in Oakland County. Thank you. I think that she wants a picture.
We'll take a quick picture and then we'll get on with the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner, so much. That was tremendous. Students, if you passed by the table and didn't pick up a pocket Declaration of Independence and Constitution, make sure you grab one on the way out. We also have wristbands, which on one side say Patriot Week and the other side say Go Lions, because we had a Lions watch party. So if you either like the Lions or a Patriot and you didn't get your wristband, please do. If you hate them both, then don't. But I expect that all of you will pick up them for one reason or another. You've heard about Patriot Week, so I'm not going to belabor the point other than saying on the pocket declarations and constitutions, there's an introduction, a little bit more about what you've heard. There is a website and my personal email address. As I said before, Seaholm is very near and dear to me because my daughter, Leah, who co-founded Patriot Week, graduated from here. She's now a doctor in Indianapolis. So we know that this is a great school, and I expect huge things from each of you. Right? Right? Right. All right. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to establish new government, laying its foundation such principles and organizing its power such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Those words from the Declaration of Independence were revolutionary in 1776, and they remain revolutionary today. And despite the controversy about America and our role on the world stage, really, America's always been controversial on the world stage, we remain a beacon of hope, a torch of liberty for billions of people across the world. Most people living in the world wish that their country was more like ours. Some people are so desperate about their country, they'd rather just leave and come live here. And some people hate us so much they're willing to blow themselves up just to hurt our innocent civilians. And whether they love us or hate us, they're all motivated by those founding first principles articulated in our Declaration of Independence and embedded in our Constitution. The rule of law, unalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, equality, and the right to alter or abolish an oppressive government. That's what makes America, America. And it's not as fun as it might be, Taylor Swift and her boyfriend. It's not Fortnite or Pokemon Go. I'm dating myself. I need some newer examples. And we know it's not the Detroit Pistons. It's those founding first principles articulated in our Declaration of Independence and embedded in our Constitution. The rule of law, that the law will govern everyone. That's very unique in human history and even today, where there are places where the government, the people that are in charge, don't have to follow the law, and whatever they want to do, they do, without having to worry about what the law says. That's how the world was almost entirely when we declared independence in 1776, and it's very much the same now. Think about places like Iran and North Korea and Russia. Is there a rule of law in Russia? No. We believe the rule of law, unalienable rights, and that belief is that we get our rights from the Creator, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Unalienable means, alienability is an old-fashioned term. It means to sell or transfer. Unalienability means you can't transfer or sell. So we believe that our rights are born in us when we are, just because we're human beings, and that those rights can't be taken from us. They're within us, and they can't be taken away. We're actually the only country in world history that was founded on that belief. And then we've taken that belief and incorporated it into our Constitution through the Bill of Rights and other provisions of the Constitution that protect our right to free speech, our right to practice our religion. If we're charged with a crime, we have the right, the presumption of innocence, and the right to have a lawyer. We have the right to assemble. We have the right to petition our government and complain to our government. And that is not the case in many countries across the world. China, you want to go do a demonstration in China, they're going to arrest you all, if not slaughter you like they did in Tiananmen Square. In England, of all places, someone put a social note, a post about an opinion on something, and they arrested him and threw him in prison. A social media post. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't going to attack anybody. He just expressed his opinion about something, and now he's in prison. And that's in England. Think about what that's like in places like Iran, in North Korea, in Cuba. So we have the rule of law, and the rule of law is what you've got now in your hands, okay? That is the Constitution of the United States. That's the supreme law of the land, and that's what everyone has to follow, both the people in the government and all the other people that are not in the government, the people at large. So we have the rule of law and animal rights, limited government. We believe that government should be limited, not unwieldy and not totalitarian or complete control. And think about places like Nazi Germany, where there were kings, the Soviet Union, where Stalin just did whatever he wanted, had absolute authority over the entire society, Maoist China. That was the norm until we declared independence, and then we did something nobody else had ever done. We wrote down what the limits were in the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 8, in that little pamphlet you have, if you read that, it says what powers the federal government has, and that's all it's supposed to do. Then we have, rule of law, inalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, and that is the idea that we come together as a society and that we, instead of living in a state of nature, all right, if you live in a state of nature, you have all these unalienable rights. Somebody comes into your house and they take your cell phone, you have the right to chase them down and beat them up, right? Because it's your property and there's no police, there's no government to protect you. That leads to vigilante justice, and as Thomas Hobbes would say, a short, brutish life, nasty, brutish life. And so we've come together and we've created a social compact where the people give up a little bit of the natural rights to a government so the government can protect them. And again, in America, we've written that social compact down in that Constitution that you have in your hands. So we have the rule of law, inalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, equality. This is the idea that we're all equal under the law, and that's because the Creator made us all. We're all have a divine spark in us, and that we're all worth something. And I'm talking to each of you now. You all have a mission in life. You have a calling. Now, I remember high school. Some of my high school was great. A lot of it sucked, okay? I'm sure a lot of you are having challenges today. First thing is you're going to graduate, you're going to get out of this, and your life will go on. So if you had a miserable experience, or if you've had a great experience, this is just a 4-year period in your life. You got a long road ahead of you. So think about that as you move forward with your life. And set some goals. What do you want to do? Work with a counselor, your parents, a friend. What is your long-term objective? And then plot out a strategy for how to achieve it. If you do that, you can be tremendously successful, no matter what challenges you have here today, or if you're doing great, you're the captain of the football team, you're getting A+, you got this great scholarship, don't let this be the summit of your life. Let this be just the beginning. Okay? So you all have that ability. World history, most people weren't treated equally. You had a nobility or a ruling class, and 99.9% of the people were subservient to the government or to that noble class. That's not the case in America, and despite all of our problems and defects and shortfalls, especially when we started the country and we didn't have religious liberty for everyone, and we had slaves, and we didn't treat women right, and they didn't have the right to vote. We put up that idea that all men are created equal, and made huge strides in our country because people said, you're hypocrites, you're not living up to that ideal, and that's what drove the change. And then we have the idea that you can change or alter or abolish an oppressive government, and I got to go back. Equality is, if you look at Amendment 14 of the Constitution, we had this big Civil War, lots of struggles, and in the aftermath of that, we adopted the Reconstruction Amendments, and that's in the 14th Amendment, that equal protection of the laws and due process for everybody. And we also gave men the right to vote in the 15th Amendment that were African Americans, and then all women the right to vote in the 19th Amendment. So that's all in the Constitution because people like you got agitated, upset, and made a difference in the world. And then the last thing is the right to alter, abolish an oppressive government. And the Constitution, we can amend the Constitution, we can have a constitutional convention, we can protest, we can write articles, we can petition the government. There's all kinds of mechanisms within the Constitution that provides for what I like to call a bloodless revolution. And if you're not happy with what things are going on now, you can change it by getting involved. And we've got gentlemen up here this takes a lot of courage to run for office, and all three of these folks are either running for or have run for office, and they're putting their reputation and energy and blood and talent on the line to make a difference, to help effectuate that bloodless revolution. And of course, if we have a long train of abuses and usurpations, Evan's seen a design for absolute despotism. That's what's in the Declaration of Independence. So you got a tyrant, and they don't let up for like 15 years, then you have the right to go to force of arms. But we don't have to do that here in America because we have all those constitutional protections I've talked about. Now, you heard about what we were doing in many of the other schools. We had a reenactor, but Seaholm, we've started a tradition when there's an open election for governor, we bring in some candidates and have a different kind of discussion than you might normally expect. First off, they're not going to be 10-second sound bites, and they're going to be not about can you raise the gas tax 5 cents or should we do that, but deeper issues in light of what Patriot Week is all about and our Constitution, our Declaration. The hope is that we run through the discussion, and then we might have some time at the end for questions for students. So if you have questions in your mind that are along these lines, I don't want the gas tax or the speeding ticket question, but kind of a deeper question, then that would be great. We have 2 people that are here by video. One is Sheriff Christopher Swanson, and because he's on video, we're going to have him go first. And you have to bear with us because I didn't quite explain it right to our technology folks, and they're wonderful. So the goal is that he'll answer the first question, and then the other folks will answer the question. The 2 other gubernatorial candidates will answer the question. Then we'll go to the Attorney General, and there's an Attorney General candidate here, and one by video. So we're going to have each of them answer the questions. First the gubernatorial, then the Attorney General candidates. And I'm going to let each of them do a 15-second introduction of themselves. So we're going to start with Kevin Kiefski.
Is this on? I'm not sure. Is it? Okay, perfect. My name is Kevin Kiefski. This is my first time here at Seaholm. I'm running for Attorney General, and I actually live here in Birmingham, about 5 minutes away. So it was relatively easy to get here. I was in Lansing testifying in front of the House earlier, but it's great to be with all of you today.
I'm Kevin Reinke, and I live in Bloomfield. I was a candidate for governor in the last election cycle, and it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Is this on? Okay. Tom Leonard, grew up in a small town called Montrose, just north of Flint. Currently live in DeWitt. Just a bit about my background. Used to be an assistant prosecutor in Flint, was an assistant attorney general. I spent 6 years in the legislature, my final 2 years as the House Speaker. I was President Trump's U.S. Attorney nominee for the Western District of Michigan, and for the past 6 years I've been a partner at a law firm, Plunkett Cooney. You've probably passed the office on Woodward Avenue, and I am currently a candidate for governor. Glad to be here.
They're all being very modest because they have great resumes and they didn't want to tell us about them. So I will get to the first question. You are interested in being the governor or attorney general. Please explain to the students, what does that office do? If we could have Sheriff Swanson on, please.
Hey, Seaholm High, Chris Swanson, the Sheriff of Genesee County. Just north of you, behind me is the city of Flint, my hometown. I'm running to be the next governor of the state of Michigan, and I'm so thankful to answer these 9 questions, to encourage you, to inspire you, and to give you an idea of where I come from when it comes to this democracy and the great days ahead. Thanks for having me. Being the governor is a great role. In fact, it mirrors the role that I'm in right now. As the Sheriff of Genesee County, and any sheriff, we enforce laws and maintain order. If you look at the Constitution here in the state of Michigan, the governor is to enforce laws and maintain order. But it's one of 3 branches. Of course, you have the executive branch, which is the leader of the state. Then you have the legislative branch, which is the House and the Senate, and the judicial branch, which is our courts, the Supreme Court. Those 3 branches are check and balances. But the governor allows that person in there to do a lot of great things. Sign laws, approve the budget, but more importantly, the governor can unite, respond to chaos and crisis in a way that brings people together. That's the most important role in the state of Michigan when it comes to leading the state and bringing folks together just like you.
Kevin Reinke, I have to adjust the question for you because it says you were interested in being governor, but you ran for governor. You have not made an announcement about running for governor this time, although there's a lot of speculation that he's going to. But can you tell us what does the governor do? What's the office?
So I believe that the office of the governor is to run the business of the state of Michigan. Sheriff Swanson referenced that you sign the budget, and you're actually the boss of the representatives and the boss of the people of Michigan. So, in essence, you set a tone, you set a vision for the state that the people support because they voted for you, and you go to the legislature with that vision and have them articulate laws that reflect that. And I come from a business background. I was never a politician, and I think that it's something that my father said to me. There is a time to learn, and you guys are going through that right now. And you're real close to the next step in your life. There's a time to earn. And all of you hopefully will have jobs, hopefully in the state of Michigan. And then there's a time to serve. And those 3 aspects are what make America great, what make Michigan great, and will give you the opportunity to maybe one day be governor of the state of Michigan, or at least to run.
Thank you. Tom Leonard.
Briefly, I see the role as governor as being the chief executive officer of the state of Michigan with 10 million bosses. And that's the 10 million residents that live here in the state. It's the governor that proposes a budget. It's the governor that signs a budget. It's the governor that has ideas about laws. But most importantly, The governor needs to understand that it's not the executive office that makes laws, that's the legislative branch. And I think too many people have forgotten that. The governor is also responsible for enforcing and carrying out the Constitution. I will say this, if I'm the state's next governor, there are things in the Constitution that I personally don't like, I may not agree with, but you know what? They have to be enforced because there is no one person, even the governor of the state of Michigan, that's bigger than the state's Constitution.
Very good. Thank you. Our next candidate is running for Attorney General, and he's going to be by video. His name is Eli Savit. He's currently the elected prosecutor for Washtenaw County and running for the Democratic nomination for Michigan Attorney General. He was a law clerk for Justices Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. He lectures at the University of Michigan Law School. If we could have him answer the question.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Eli Savit. I'm currently the elected county prosecutor in Washtenaw County, and I'm running for Michigan Attorney General. I'm really thrilled to join you here virtually for Patriot Week. I regret that I can't be there in person, but I got a list of some great questions that I'm going to go through and answer. And so hope you'll find them informative as to how I think about our Constitution, how I think about the law, and how it would bring these values to the office of Attorney General. So the first question, you are interested in being Attorney General. Please explain what does that office do? The Attorney General, the name consists of two words. One is attorney. So the Attorney General is, of course, a lawyer. And the other is general, which really means that the Attorney General is the top lawyer for the people of the state of Michigan. And they have a general portfolio, which means they do a whole bunch of different stuff. The Attorney General is the one lawyer that can go into court and represent the people of the entire state of Michigan. And the Attorney General does that in criminal prosecutions, of course, when somebody has committed a crime. But they also do that in cases involving consumer protection, for example, where a business is cheating customers and maybe jacking prices up much higher than they should be. They go into court for cases involving environmental protection when polluters are contaminating our air and our water and are impacting the people of the state of Michigan. So the Attorney General really at its core is the top lawyer on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan. They're in court on a bunch of different subjects, and it's an incredibly important position, particularly right now, where so much is happening in the courts and so many rights are at stake.
So just so that we understand how this works, and I should have said this at the beginning, the Attorney General, the governor people, they have to run in a primary, which will be in August. And they run either as a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, or a Natural Law Party, a Green Party. And then whoever gets that party's nomination will be in the general election. But the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and Lieutenant Governor, State Board of Education, Wayne State University trustees, Michigan State University trustees, University of Michigan trustees, did I miss anybody? Who did I miss?
I think you got it.
I got it right. They all go to a party convention, and at the party convention, they're nominated. So their electorate is very different. It's delegates to the convention, which is a whole different animal. So he's running for the Democrat nomination. Kevin here, Kievsky, is running for the Republican nomination for Attorney General. And please answer the question.
Thank you very much, Judge. So the Attorney General is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state of Michigan. Tom was able to talk about having 10 million bosses. For me, it would be having actually 10 million clients. You do everything from criminal prosecution to civil suits, either prosecuting or defending with those civil suits. You also make sure that when it comes to that Constitution that you have in your hand, all 7 articles, all 27 amendments, we're able to protect and preserve it. So when it comes to being the Attorney General, you're basically the chief lawyer. You have an office that right now is the largest law firm in the state, and we're here to make sure that in a whole variety of areas, we're able to protect you. And I'll just end with this. I did mention earlier that I was in Lansing, and I drove here directly from Lansing because I testified in front of the House Oversight Committee. I won't get into the particular case I was testifying about. You can see it online if you want to see it. But it was about trying to protect the constitutional rights of those that are currently facing abuses. And our Constitution is the only thing that really stands between anarchy and order. And we need to make sure that we preserve order. And as Attorney General, that's what I want to do, to actually have all of you and your parents and your friends and everyone else's clients.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start with Sheriff Swanson and then go to Tom Leonard and Kevin Rinke, is describe your underlying philosophy about the purpose of government and how that informs your views on policymaking for the office you're seeking. Describe your underlying philosophy about the purpose of government. Sheriff Swanson?
I love that on my patrol cars, and what I believe is to protect, serve, and unify. That's what government's there for. To protect the vulnerable, the voiceless, the generations, to protect people's freedoms, their rights, to protect when natural or man-made disasters come in. Number one, government's there to protect. Number two, it's there to serve. This is an opportunity for us to serve the people who put us in the office and not to divide based on how people believe or how they live or where they're from. To serve people, period, across the board. But the unify is another one. That's the one where you can, out of chaos, bring order. That's when you can find common ground. That's when you can find, hey, this is a good answer or a good path for everybody. See, government there to protect, serve, and unify. So whether it's a bill or whether it's a budget issue, you have to ask yourself, Governor, does this help people, the vulnerable? Does it help those who have freedoms? Does this allow people to be represented and to be seen? If the answer is yes, that's good government.
Very good. Tom Leonard.
Yeah, we've got the freest, greatest nation in this entire world. And I believe that government is there to protect that freedom and to protect those rights. And when I was in the legislature, I am a big proponent of limited government. And I will tell you, even fiscally, I saw way too many times where government would come in and they would pass legislation that would pick winners and losers in the business world. They would pass legislation that would give one company an unfair advantage, or they would dedicate money that would give another company advantage over another one. That is not the role of government. The role of government is to protect your rights, create an equal playing field for everybody to compete. That's what I believe the role of government is.
Very good. Kevin Rinke.
I'm a small government person. I believe in the power of the individual. I believe that government serves very specific roles. And one of the things that compelled me when I ran is I think government has gotten outside those roles. I'm actually afraid of the power of government, and I think you should be as well. So I believe that in a governor's role, the key thing isn't are you a Republican or a Democrat. The key thing is, can you lead the people of the state? And can you treat them equally as respectfully as needed? Can you create and help create, by working with the legislature, a foundation in an environment for the people to be successful in? And then what you got to do is get the hell out of the way so you guys can take off, instead of being restricted or conforming to what government is.
Thank you. The same question is being directed to Ali Savit, who will be on the video.
Look, at the end of the day, I believe that the government should exist to keep people safe, to provide people with equal opportunity, and to allow people a fair opportunity to thrive. Now, of course, that means that, in the legal system, we have a whole criminal system set up to ensure public safety. But more fundamentally, I think the government should be using all of its levers to ensure that nobody is being taken advantage of, that there is no power imbalance that is allowing bad actors to harm other people, and that everybody in our state and our community has the opportunity to build a better life. So, what that means for Attorney General is, look, I believe very strongly that the law should and does protect all of our rights and protect them equally. That means, for example, that all of us need to be entrusted with the right to speak freely. It also means that nobody should, for example, be living in a community where they're subject to poisoned air or contaminated water and their health is at risk. I believe that everybody, every child in this state and in our country deserves the right to an excellent education. And I believe that the government shouldn't be treating people differently because of who they are, whether that's because of their race, whether that's because of their sex, whether it's because of their sexual orientation, what have you. All of that is something that I would fight for as Attorney General. It's all stuff that is embedded in our Constitution. And ultimately, all of this giving us all a fair opportunity to succeed, a fair opportunity to be safe, equal protection under the laws. Fighting for that as Attorney General is going to allow everybody in Michigan the opportunity to build a life in which they can thrive.
Kevin Kiefsky, purpose of government.
So how many of you have a younger sibling like in elementary school? Just by like show of hands. All right. I got 3 siblings myself. My youngest sibling is 10 years younger than me. You ever play a game with them and then they decide to change the rules in the middle of the game and you're like, you can't do that, but they're like, yes, I can? That's basically what I believe in the sense of preventing that. You don't want cheating. I believe that when it comes to the Constitution, these are the rules of the game and they cannot change. Right now, for example, you take a look at a lot of different issues being debated out there, and all these people, they want to perhaps change the Constitution, change the way it's interpreted. You don't want to have that younger sibling, that younger brother, that younger sister changing the rules. I believe that if you maintain the rules, you're going to be able to actually have a society where it's predictable, and you're going to be able to know what's going to happen should you undertake a course of action. I mean, it's interesting for me to be back in a high school as well because I used to be a school superintendent, believe it or not. I'm in my early 40s, but I maybe look a little bit younger than normal. But I remember during COVID, and during COVID, the governor shut down schools not once, but she tried to do it twice. First time was at the beginning of 2020. The second time that she did that, I sued the governor. And I said, you don't have the constitutional ability to do that. You know what ended up happening? After the judge heard the arguments, the judge is like, I have a lot to think about. We call this taking it under advisement. And then we were supposed to go back to federal district court. And then what happened hours before meeting the judge? The governor had an impromptu press conference, went up to the actual podium. Ladies and gentlemen, science has changed. We don't have to really worry about kids being super spreaders. And then she's allowed everyone to go back to school. The bottom line is this. When you take a look at the governor or the government, they have to have their powers limited because you don't want people changing the rules of the game.
Thank you. The next question, which you'll never hear on a network TV station, trust me. How does the Declaration of Independence inform your view of policymaking as either governor or attorney general? Sheriff Swanson.
The Declaration of Independence is a declaration of freedom. And that's what happened when our founders said, no more of tyranny, no more division, we're going to go that way. And it was a courageous move all along. We're talking people who risked it all to give independence to people that even today are beneficiaries of that decision. Here we are in 2025. Independence is freedom. It's equality. And we need as government to make sure that we understand people, not just our perception, but what is their perspective. Everybody's deserving of these freedoms, and that is the Declaration. And good government needs to remember that. These are independent voters, independent consumers. These are our people. Give them their independence and freedom, and protect people to make sure everybody's treated with equality and dignity.
Very good. And now we'll go back to Kevin Rinke.
I don't know if you guys realize, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, there'd never been a document like that before. They basically said to the king, who they were beholden to, we're not going to play this game anymore. We want freedom, and we want a different form of government. And they were willing to die for it. Over the years, when the United States is engaged in wars, one common thread is usually about freedom and the ability, sometimes for Americans, sometimes for people from other countries, to be free and to have representation that speaks of their will. As we sit here today, you guys, the Declaration of Independence, we're the only country in the world that has one that's unique to us. And I hope you guys value how powerful that is. Because someday you may have to choose, are you willing to die for the freedoms that this country offers you? Or are you willing to give those up? And I hope you reference back and look within this document and see just how important freedom is. I suspect most of you don't understand it. You take it for granted. You think that freedom is free. It's not. Freedom is fragile, just like your life is fragile. And you need to recognize the power of the word, the power of laws, the power of an entity, in this case, the United States, that gives you the opportunity to express yourself.
Thank you. Tom Leonard.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Kevin said, and very well said, when I look at the Declaration of Independence, it gave way to what I believe was the greatest governing document this world has ever seen. And I remember a few years ago when somebody very close to me called and they complained about something that was going on at the federal government, and I knew that this person was close to being 30 years old, and they had never voted a day in their life. I said, stop it, shut up, I don't want to hear it. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, hundreds of thousands of young men and women died to give you the right to vote, to make a change in this country. And you were too lazy to get up that day and do it. I don't want to hear it. The bottom line is this: we can never forget the freedom that we have to redress our government every 2 years at that voting booth. And to me, there is no right that is more fundamental than that, than even being able to vote leaders either in, to, or out of office. But never forget the reason you have that right is because hundreds of thousands of young men and women died to give it to you.
Thank you. All right, Ali Savit is going to be on the video again.
To sort of build off of my response to the last question, there's a couple of points in the Declaration of Independence that I find particularly insightful. One is, of course, the line that we all know, which says that all of us are entitled to the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government needs to be responsible for ensuring that those rights are protected. Of course, it needs to make sure that people's lives are protected. It needs to make sure that we have liberty, that we have the right to free speech, that we have the right to due process in our courts. And if we're accused of a crime, we have the right to a fair trial. It means that we have the right to do what we want with our own bodies. That's something I believe very strongly in. But that pursuit of happiness part is really important too. The government doesn't guarantee happiness. It can't guarantee happiness. But I do think that what the government should be making sure of is that all of us have a fair opportunity to pursue that. So what does that mean? Well, that means starting at birth, every kid should have the opportunity to go to a school in which they have an opportunity to learn. And when they grow up, they should have an opportunity to get a job that pays well enough, not just that they can support themselves, but that they can support a family, not just getting by, but being able to enjoy life, being able to take a vacation every so often, being able to enjoy time off with their families and their loved ones, being able to have a secure retirement and know that down the line, the money will be there when they stop working and want to enjoy the twilight years of their life. It means that everybody should be entitled to an opportunity to get health care, right? And an opportunity to breathe clean air and drink fresh water and not be subject to contamination by polluters. All of this is stuff that I think the Attorney General has a very important role in making sure the government fulfills its promise towards. Look, the Attorney General is the actor, like I said, that can go into court on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan. And it's important to preserve these rights. It's important to preserve the rights to free speech and due process, to clean air and fresh water, to an equal education system, and to the right to people to be paid what they're owed and not have money taken out of their paycheck unlawfully by their bosses. That's the pursuit of happiness piece. It doesn't guarantee happiness. Some people are going to be sad. But at the very least, the government should set out the conditions that allow people to pursue it.
And Kevin Kievsky, bring us home on question number 3.
So, in many different ways, I disagree with the Attorney General candidate for the Democratic Party. I'm going to tell you why. The Declaration of Independence was something that was signed on, of course, July 4th, 1776. It talks about your rights in the sense of trying to protect them from a tyrant. At the time, we all know exactly what happened. There was a king. That king did not give any type of rights to those that lived here in the colonies. You know what the Declaration of Independence really means to me? It's really the other words a little bit farther down. They pledge their lives, their treasure, and their sacred honor. They talk about saying, essentially, if I translate that to modern day, guys, there's no turning back. We're going to get killed. We're going to perhaps be captured. We're going to perhaps lose everything, but trying to declare independence from a tyrant, from a monarch, is important enough for me, my family, and my community. All the different things that he was talking about, I don't necessarily disagree with having clean water. I don't necessarily disagree with having good schools and all these other things, but that's something that happens not because of the Declaration of Independence, but because of later on the Constitution and other laws. Think of it this way. It's no turning back. That's what that means to me, and it shows that when it comes to each one of you, our founding fathers wanted to stake their claim here for freedom, and we just have to appreciate what they did. And it's not even just appreciate, we have to carry that on. That means all of you, go vote. I'm not saying vote Republican, Democrat, but go be involved. And the last thing I'll say, I mean, take a look at Charlie Kirk. He got murdered, he got shot in the neck. Why? Because he was attempting to protect his right and your right to speak freely. That's something that the Declaration really means to me in the sense of staking and putting out your life so that you can actually protect your family and your friends and your community. So that's my slight distinction with the esteemed prosecutor of Washtenaw County.
Very good. Who is your favorite American figure? Why is he or she your favorite? And how does he or she influence your view of leadership? Favorite American figure, why, and how do they influence your view of leadership? Sheriff Swanson.
Bobby Kennedy, 1968. Here's the younger brother of John F. Kennedy who was assassinated. Here's one that was counted an outlier, a dark horse, somebody who nobody knew if he was going to make it, but he just kept pursuing. He became the Attorney General of the United States, went after people who did wrong. And when he became a senator, then he decided to run for president. He was always going against the odds. There's probably people watching right now that knows exactly what that means. Going against the odds, swimming upstream. But Bobby Kennedy never lost the vision to go look for people who had no voice. When he was running for either Senate or in the presidency, he would go to Mississippi and he would talk to people who were living in poverty. In the United States, they had nothing. He would walk and see people from the Native Americans to people who had, living on the Appalachian Trail, and he would ask them questions, what can we do to help you? A guy who, when Cesar Chavez was doing a hunger fast to give farmers and workers their dignity, and he did this by sacrificing himself, he goes, I would only break this fast if Bobby Kennedy comes here and breaks it with me. And that's what started the United Farm Workers Association. Bobby Kennedy saw Martin Luther King in Birmingham, Alabama, when he was locked up in a jail cell, just getting voter rights. I mean, this guy fought for the underdog. This guy fought for people who didn't think anybody had anybody. That's why I love what he does and what he stands for, which is a model of what I agree with and what I stand for, is you fight for people who need you to fight for them. And every time I go to Washington, D.C., I go to his grave in Arlington. And I just go by myself and just think about this simple grave marker of what he stood for. And the fact that he was assassinated after he won the California primary for president, and 5 minutes after doing his acceptance speech, he was shot in the head. We see that all too well and all real with Charlie Kirk. That people are sacrificing their lives for an ideology, whether we agree with it or not. And when Bobby Kennedy's life was taken, one of his final words was, is everybody else okay? The presence of mind for him to ask about other people while he was dying, that's leadership. That's a guy that I mentor. I wasn't even born in 1968. This time when I go back to Washington, D.C. in October, I'm going to go visit Bobby Kennedy and his wife. Ethel's now buried next to him. They were a dynamic duo, a power couple. And what they represented and what they did to set my course where it is right now, Bobby Kennedy protects people, serves people, and unifies people. And I'll never forget that example.
Tom Leonard.
And there are so many options, but I'm going to have to go with Abraham Lincoln. This was somebody who, as president, kept this nation together when it was at its closest moment to being torn completely apart. And most importantly, he rid this country of the greatest sin that it ever created with slavery. I'd have to go with Abraham Lincoln.
Kevin Rinke.
I'm actually going to talk about three different people because he stole one of the ones that I would have said. Abe Lincoln was great. But in my lifetime, Martin Luther King, Ronald Reagan, and Charlie Kirk. Interestingly enough, all three were leaders. All three had very, very strong opinions. All three resonated with the people of this country in times of crisis and in times of change. And all three actually spoke their truth. And if you believe in the freedoms that this country stands for, their truth should not be divisive. Their truth shouldn't scare you. Their truth should unify you. It's incredibly powerful. And I challenge you, if you aren't familiar with those three, in an in-depth way, that you look at them. And look at Abe Lincoln, too.
Very good. Ali Savit.
I had the tremendous opportunity early in my legal career to work actually for an American historical figure in the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, it's kind of cheating, I guess, because I worked for her to say that she's my favorite. But I think she may very well have been my favorite, even if I hadn't had that opportunity. And I'll tell you why. Justice Ginsburg, before she was even a justice on the United States Supreme Court, she was a lawyer. She was a civil rights lawyer who was laser focused on ensuring sex equality, on making sure that women and men were treated equally under the law. Now, she was practicing at a time where there were very, very few female lawyers, and certainly very few female lawyers practicing in front of the United States Supreme Court. And she was ultimately going to have to make these arguments. The argument that the Constitution protects men and women equally, she had to make it in front of an all-male U.S. Supreme Court. So what did she do? Well, she went out and she found instances of men and women being treated differently under the law where it actually disadvantaged men. As a way of showing the male justices on the Supreme Court that inequality, sex-based inequality, affects all of us, and it should be offensive no matter who it's directed against. One of her famous cases was a case out of Oklahoma, which allowed women to buy beer at the age of 18, but required men to wait until they were 21. And that was a case that she brought up to the Supreme Court in front of these 9 male justices and was able to ultimately, through this litigation strategy, get the Supreme Court of the United States, the 9 male justices of the Supreme Court, to recognize that our Constitution protects men and women's rights to be treated equally. Now, what does that mean for leadership? There's a couple things. One, of course, she was a brilliant strategist. But the other thing was that though she was focused on sex equality and she was very concerned, of course, about discrimination against women, she understood how to build alliances. She understood how to have her position actually persuade folks who weren't inclined to agree with her. In this case, men who had all the advantages of sex-based discrimination. And I think that's really important. That's really important at this moment. Justice Ginsburg was able to ultimately secure victories, not just by preaching to the choir, but by making a case to what could have been a very hostile argument. And she made the case robustly that our Constitution and the principles of equality that are in our Constitution protect all of us. And when you stereotype any one of us, it hurts all of us. That's something that I deeply admire. I admire her strategic brilliance. I admire her ability to go into the lion's den and argue these cases. But I also admire the way in which she was able to hold true to her values, but make the case in a way that convinced people that this is something that everybody should want, that it's not just about, in this case, women. And that's something I firmly believe as well. Our Constitution and the Equal Protection Clause is something that ultimately protects all of us, because discrimination, stereotyping, whether it's based on sex, race, or any other characteristic, it makes our society poor and it harms all of us.
Kevin Kiefsky.
I'm not going to go with 3, but I'm also not going to go with 1. I'm going to go with 2. First, how many of you have been to Capitol Park in Detroit where you know what that is? Okay. So Capitol Park is over there in downtown Detroit, and you may not know this, you should visit it, because the very first governor of Michigan has a statue there, and that's actually where he's buried. Stevens T. Mason. Any guess? I know this is not The Price is Right, and you come on down, but like, any guess how old he was when he became governor? Someone just shout it out. He was 22 years old. He's a few years older than you. Why do I like, Governor Mason? Because he had a challenge to actually be the very first governor of Michigan, and he actually set up everything that we have here today. The second individual I'm going to mention is a gentleman by the name of Chief Justice Marshall, one of the first Chief Justices of the U.S. Supreme Court. And I can talk about it on, and I'm going to see people drooling like, the kids on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? But, and again, I don't know if you guys even see that movie anymore, but you take a look at Chief Justice Marshall. There was a case called Marbury v. Madison. You probably heard about this in your government or your U.S. history class. Why is that important? Because that started this thing called judicial review. It actually said that when it comes to the courts, they interpret the Constitution. And that's really important to me as an attorney, because when it comes to judges, they get to actually say what the words mean. Judge Warren handles a criminal docket, and a civil docket. I've been in front of him before. And I'm going to tell you, you go in front of him as a lawyer, you better know exactly what you're saying, because he's going to tell you if you're wrong, because he interprets the law. I'll leave you with this. I took, as I mentioned, I used to be a school superintendent. I brought a group of students to see actually a Supreme Court justice to DC, met with him. And this is right after he got appointed by President Trump. And we're taking a look at essentially all these kids who went to his same school. I brought them over, and I knew his law clerk. And we were gathered in the big room where you got the big windows overlooking the Capitol. And I'm talking about Justice Neil Gorsuch. And he said, you know what I love? I love actually being able to take a look across the window at the Capitol building across. And they come here with all these controversies, and they write all these laws, and I tell them what their words mean. And I'm so glad, because I used to be a superintendent of a Catholic school system, I'm so glad that Sister so-and-so actually taught me how to diagram sentences, one of the most important things ever. So you take a look at Marbury v. Madison with Chief Justice Marshall. You could take a look as well at Governor Mason. Doesn't matter how old or how young, if you participate and you want to make a difference, you can. So those are my two.
We're going to spice it up a little bit and take a different track. So you heard some very interesting responses, very different. So if you have a historical person that you thought of that wasn't mentioned, raise your hand and I'll call on you to get you. Who's your favorite historical person in America that you didn't hear about already? Really? None of you have an opinion? Nobody has an opinion. Who's your favorite historical figure? I'm going to pick on this guy because he was asleep. Who's your favorite historical figure in American history? Donald Trump. Okay. Anybody got somebody else? Yes. Obama. All right. Got some diversity here, political diversity. Anybody else? Okay. Go Blue, Michigan here. Go Blue. I went to law school there. Yes, you. My son is there. Graduate of Groves. Senior. That's what you want to do. So, favorite historical figure? Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Already mentioned, but another vote for Abe. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Teddy Roosevelt, very good, very interesting. Over here. George Washington, my favorite. There you go. Awesome. Yes, sir. JFK. All right, very good. So what we're learning about this is there's a lot of historical figures. Nobody mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. or Frederick Douglass or Susan B. Anthony or Elizabeth Cady Stanton, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson. There's a whole, Thomas Paine. There's a whole slew of people. Patrick Henry, that you can learn from and be inspired by, but you got to learn about them to be able. All those people made a huge difference in their lives at the time and in our lives today. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be living in the society that we live in today. I think we're done with the videos. They're going to go a little too long, so we're just going to go straight to the three gentlemen that are here. And the next question is similar, but a little different. What is your favorite American historical document or speech? Why is it your favorite, and how does it provide your insight in policy making? And I forget who, I think this is Kevin Rinke's turn, right? Favorite American historical document or speech?
There's a lot of great documents, but I want to start with this. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution. Think about those words, guys. We the people, and what it did And 250 years later, the Declaration of Independence had to come first because you had to be free from the tyranny of the kings and the czars of the time. But then you had to figure out a way to bring 13 unique states. How many people here call the United States a democracy? Raise your hand. Raise them high. You're wrong. You're wrong. The United States is a republic, and there's a distinct difference, and you should understand that difference. The republic is what creates the equality. A democracy is 50% of the vote plus one rules. So the little person would never have a say. The minority would never have a right. They would be forced to go with the majority. But in a republic, you actually achieve equality, and that's what the Constitution set out to do and what it accomplished. It took 13 states that were divided by their religious beliefs, that were divided by how they wanted America to look, and it melded them together. And 250 years later, it's the greatest document ever written in the world, other than the Bible.
Tom Leonard.
Judge, I'm going to narrow it down to one section of one document. And I'm going to read Amendment 1, First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is what makes America great. I'm looking out in this crowd. I know we're in Birmingham, Michigan, and I would dare to say we have people who practice several different types of faith sitting out here today. And every one of you can go home tonight. You can go into a room in this school. You can pray to the God that you serve. And you don't have to worry about your government throwing you into prison or killing you because of the God that you choose to pray to. Very few countries across this world can say that. You have a right, for the most part, to say what you want. And there are people that say some very abhorrent and awful and terrible things I completely disagree with. But you know what? I would fight every day for their right to say it, because this is America. You look at the freedom of the press. When I was the House Speaker, every single day I made a decision. Every single day I would say something. Every time I would hold a press conference, in the back of my mind, I knew that whatever I said could be printed or criticized in the paper within minutes. That is what makes America great. And I think this amendment is not only part of the greatest document that's ever been written, I believe this is the greatest part of the greatest document that's ever been written.
And Kevin Kiefsky.
I suppose maybe I'm just going to go along with that, even though I could talk about Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail and a whole bunch of other things I absolutely love. But really, just because of how relevant it is today, when I was in front of the House testifying. And I won't get into the details of this case. Let's just say it was very high profile. You had the Attorney General currently right now attempting to throw 16 people into prison for a very, very long period of time because they decided that they wanted to speak their mind. And I defeated her. And it's not so much I defeated her and I got the case dismissed. It's more so going to what Tom Leonard was talking about, our 5 freedoms that we have in the First Amendment. The last is the right to petition your government for the redress of your grievances. That's exactly what they did. In fact, I remember during this week-long trial, or we call it a preliminary examination, but think of it kind of like a miniature trial, I had the officer in charge, the detective, actually on the stand. You know what I did? I pulled up that First Amendment. I put it up on the screen. And I said, "Detective, can you read that?" He did. And then when it came to the very last thing, I said, "Petition for redress of grievances." I'm like, "Officer, what does that mean to you? Do you know what that means?" He said, "No." He didn't know what that meant. And I maintain, and I said this to the legislature this morning, if they actually recognized, appreciated, knew what the Constitution says, none of these people would have had a weaponization of their government against them for 2.5 years. That's wrong. You need to know what the First Amendment says, in addition to the rest of the Constitution, to make sure that these problems never happen to any of you or anyone else.
Thank you. Just a couple other thoughts. There's the Gettysburg Address. There's I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. The Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death by Patriot. Lots of very interesting speeches and documents out there for you to learn from. I'm going to do one more question for the panel, and then we're going to open it up to the students. Our political atmosphere, and I wrote this, a while back, not realizing what was going to happen. Our political atmosphere is poisonous and vicious, and our education system, for the most part, there's shining bright lights like Groves and Seaholm, and BCS, but for the most part, our education system is not teaching civics and history as it should. Are these related? And if so, what should we do?
Yeah, I don't know that I can say that they are related. I can tell you they're both important. And I will tell you, I think one of the biggest problems that we have today, and it's got a lot of great uses, but one of the biggest problems we have right now is social media on these things. Because people can be very brave and they can say some very crazy things behind a computer screen or behind a phone, and they're not willing to sit down and talk about issues and have a discussion. When I was in law school, and it seems like it was just yesterday, but I was there from 2004 to 2007. I tell this story. I only ever got one scholarship when I was in law school. It was called the Ralph M. Freeman Scholarship. And I wish I could tell you it was because I was in the top 3% of the class and I had this full ride. That wasn't it. It was given once a year to the one student in the class that most exemplified the rules of professional conduct by treating everybody in the building with dignity and respect. And I got that scholarship because I was nominated by a very good friend of mine. His name was Joe Calhoun, and Joe would not be afraid for me to tell the story, would be upset for me to tell the story. I was probably one of the furthest right or most conservative students in the law school, and Joe was probably about as far left as you could go. And I can't tell you how many times Joe and I would go out to dinner, we would sit down, and we would hash out political differences, and we would learn from one another. For the most part, I believe we've lost that as a country. As I mentioned earlier, I would fight to the death to protect your freedom of speech, even if it meant it was something that I disagreed with 100%, and I thought that it was even something abhorrent that you believed. Because we've got to have that ability to sit down and be able to agree to disagree and talk to each other instead of talking over one another. So I hope that we can get back to that as a society where we can sit down and we can have those discussions, because that is what makes this country great, and I'm worried we're losing that.
Do you guys understand the word hypocrisy? You think you understand it? So let me give you an example. And it's kind of a sick example, but I saw it today. I was watching CNN, and there was a guy on that was saying that he lost his job because of what he said about Charlie Kirk being shot. And that was a consequence of his words. Charlie Kirk lost his life because of his words. Think of the hypocrisy. This guy was saying it's not fair that I lose my job because of what I said about someone being assassinated. And at the same time, Charlie Kirk was assassinated because of what he said. Critical thinking, the ability to debate, the ability to agree to disagree, but to step forward is part of the strength that each and every one of you possess if you choose to exercise it. It's way easier to be in a group than to separate yourself from that group because you disagree with what that group is saying or doing. And what concerns me in education today, it appears, and I'm not your age anymore, that the style of learning that I was exposed to was called critical thinking. We were applauded for disagreeing politely, constructively with our teachers. We were applauded for challenging the norm peacefully in debating. They don't teach that to you folks anymore. They want you to comply. They want to create a narrative. And I'm citing, I have 3 children, examples where my kids were given bad grades because they didn't agree with what the teacher said. Maybe some of you have experienced that. That's not education, folks. Teachers should encourage you to respectfully and politely disagree with their position. They should encourage you. You have that power, and do not let anybody snuff that out. That is one of the greatest strengths that you as individuals have. But for God's sakes, do it peacefully. Think of this. Think of this. Tom's in the political eye. Kevin's in the political eye. When I ran for governor, I had several death threats, okay, for what I believed in. And you know what? I was flattered that me expressing my opinion threatened somebody so badly that they thought their only option was to kill me. You guys are where our country is going to go. You guys are going to set the tone. And maybe your parents talk like this. I'm not your parent. But you should be afraid of what you're losing in America. You should be afraid when violence and separation are considered the norm. There was just a poll that came out. There was just a poll that came out that on the left, 50% of kids in your age bracket up to 30 years old said that political violence is okay. It's okay to kill somebody if you disagree with them. Do you guys agree with that? Well, if you don't agree with it, you have to stand up against it. There's right and there's wrong. And my hope for you is that you express what your right is and that you live your life with what your right is. I thought it was interesting. Somebody down here said that they liked Donald Trump. Someone over here said they liked Barack Obama. That's beautiful. Neither one of you are wrong. You're both right. The question is can you share what you like about Donald Trump, and can you share what you like about Barack Obama without calling each other buttheads, without resorting to violence. And then the power comes from, can you put your ideas together to move everybody forward? And so, do I think that education is letting you down? I do. I do. Everybody shouldn't go to college, and yet the education system says everybody should go to college. It's not right. Everybody's not cut out for college. Life will not be fair. Life will not be fair. What do I mean by that? In the next 5 years, all of you know someone who's going to die from a car accident, from a drug overdose, from a disease. Is that fair? Some of you in your life are going to make more money than others because you worked harder or you were lucky. You might win the lotto. That's one way of getting it. Some of you might come up with the next greatest idea, another way to get it. There are going to be those people who say it's not fair that you make more money than them. That's America. Everything isn't fair. And if your expectations are for complete fairness, I think you'll be let down. So at the risk of pontificating too long, speak your truth. Be strong enough to listen and hold your truth. And when you disagree, disagree with civility and courage and commitment and conviction, because you are not wrong and you hold the power to change your opinion.
There is, I would argue, a connection between civics education and, of course, our political climate. The reason why I say that is because civics education is not meant to be boring, but it's to actually give you one thing: options. If people don't know what options are available to change their government, to change the laws, to change the situation, then, of course, they're going to result to violence. So if you know that we have a constitutional republic where you elect your representatives who will make decisions, if you know that you can change the Constitution, if you know that you can do all of these different things, then work to do that if you want to see change. Because if you don't know that, I'm not talking about you specifically, but just frankly people in general, you're going to end up with a situation where people are going to be resulting in violence. I was on WJR about 2 days ago, and got interviewed in the morning.
That's a radio station.
Radio station. It's AM too. Like, who listens to that? Probably your folks. I don't know. But when it comes to WJR, one person asked me the same thing about political violence. The tone, the tenor, the rhetoric needs to be toned down. And actually, I'm going to take the same thing that Kevin Rinke said, and I'm going to expand it a little bit. If you look at the extreme right and the extreme left among young folks, among the extreme left, for whatever reason, 26% of folks that are extreme left think that it's okay that we have political violence and to be celebrated. And on the extreme right, apparently, these are people who self-identify this way, by the way, it's only 3%. I think anything above 0% is too much. And it's not about left or right. What it's about is, how can I actually change my government without resorting to rhetoric or encouraging violence? As I told them on the radio, we got to be mindful of what we say, because you can't just light a fire and walk away. You can't do that. And that's what a lot of people have been doing. In this moment, this time, unfortunately, we got the thing with Charlie Kirk and the left. But other times in our history, we had that a little bit with the right. So civics education, as a former teacher, I used to teach AP history, AP government. I would tell actually my students that almost 20 years ago now, geez, that you, as an informed citizen, you don't have to memorize the Constitution, but you got to know the basics. It equips you to actually change your government, change your life, change your community for the better.
Thank you. I'm going to do a quick historical analog, and then we'll take questions from the students. So Back in 1776, you may or may not know, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson worked together on a committee of 5 to draft the Declaration of Independence. They had a fight. Adams told Jefferson he had to write it. Jefferson didn't want to write it. Adams won the fight. Jefferson wrote it. History was made. Then we declared independence, and we had a long war. At the end of the war, Washington became the first president. The second president shocked the world, retired. John Adams who was his vice president, ran and became president. Jefferson quit under George Washington, started his own political party, and then viciously attacked John Adams for 4 years while poor John Adams was president. After the 4 years, Jefferson wins. It's called the Revolution of 1800. How many of you have heard of the Revolution of 1800? All right, good, good. So at that point, Adams and Jefferson had called each other, not them, their proxies, had called each other just despicable names. It was a very ugly campaign, about as ugly as we would have today, or probably uglier. And eventually, after Jefferson wins, he gives his first inaugural address, and he says, we are all, a difference in opinion is not a difference in principle. We are all Federalists, and we are all Republicans. One was a Federalist, one was a Republican. And he was able to say that because he and Adams, despite their personal animosity at the time, their political fervor at a crescendo, they agreed on the basics, which was the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And so they could be bitter rivals, but in the end, unite behind those things. With the demise of civics and history education, I understand you're a bunch of social studies kids, and I know that Birmingham Schools is different, but there's a lot of students that don't get this information. And so a difference in opinion doesn't become a difference in opinion, it becomes a difference in personality, and they demonize each other. And so I think that it is related, that the demise of civics and history education, that if people aren't united behind the Declaration, then when they just fight, they're fighting as people and not as patriots who are behind those first principles. Okay, so you have heard the general tenor of my questions here today. This is what I promised these folks. So if you have something like that, that you would like to ask, you can come up to the podium here, to the microphone here, and ask a question. Otherwise, you're going to be subjected to another Judge Warren question, because we've got them for a few more minutes. We got a question here? All right, come on up. There's a microphone right there.
What's your name?
My name is Max. Can I raise this? You guys both seemed both Kevins. You guys both sort of seem to disavow political violence today, but you also seem to be very big fans of the Declaration of Independence. How would you guys differentiate the violence of the revolution from whatever you guys are referring to today, for either of you?
It's a great question.
That is a wonderful question.
Thank you.
Let me just start with this. Today, the political violence is happening because people are not speaking with each other, and as well, people are not actually reading the Constitution. They don't really know their options. Back then, there were no options. The option was, I guess you can say, stay under the monarch of England, be taxed, have no representation, and you can just live your life, or to actually make a change. I mean, I'm not going to give a big history lesson because that's up to your teachers, and Judge Warren can do the same thing too, and you guys can be like, ugh. But when it came to all the folks that actually became our founding fathers, it wasn't like that they went to arms or they decided we're going to go ahead and start this revolution right away. They attempted peacefully for many, many years to actually get a resolution. That didn't happen. So back then, that was justified in the sense of trying to protect our inalienable rights. These are rights you just can't give away. You can't divide. You can't divorce. Today, we have a Constitution, as Judge Warren said, that we can change things. So I think that's really the differentiation I would quickly make.
Yeah, I think that there was a time when violence was the only method of change. And if you think that political violence today is acceptable, what you're really doing is saying that you want to overthrow the form of government that is the United States of America. And that's the difference. As Kevin said, you now have representation. You now have a voice. The question is, do you choose to exercise your voice? Do you choose to be heard? Do you choose to be relevant? Because generationally, the old folks don't understand the young folks. Because of time, things change. And if you aren't willing to express your voice, if the old folks are leading in a direction, they may not recognize what your needs are. They're doing their best, but you have to share, you have to have that voice. And in America, and by the way, it's the only country in the world, I have visited places where you disagree and the government shows up and they chop your wife's head off. Been there. Witnessed people being shot because they disagreed. Today. And it was their government suppressing them. That's wrong. That's wrong. We don't need violence. You guys have a voice. Exercise it. Express it. And be learned about it. You know, the power of voting in America is the greatest right that exists. And less than 50% of people in America vote. Why is there bipartisanship? Because 50% of the people won't get off their fannies to have a say in where the country's going. It's the greatest privilege. And by the way, don't walk into a booth and just pull a lever saying, oh, I'm a Democrat, or oh, I'm a Republican, and not know or understand what the people who will represent you actually believe and stand for. Educate yourself. Challenge. To do that, what do you have to do? You have to express your voice. And you can do that peacefully in your family, in your friend group, and maybe even challenge people that, hey, if you disagree with me, come up to the microphone. I'd like to talk about it. Come to the front of the line. Be that person.
Very good. Tom?
Thank you both.
I was going to say, you know, to really simplify this, I mean, I see the difference between actual suppression in a government physically taking away people's rights versus political disagreement. I mean, if my little daughter, she's 9 years old, if she was sitting here right now, if one of you young men came up here and said something very inappropriate and started cussing in front of her, said something very inappropriate in front of her, I would probably bring it to your attention that that's inappropriate and get her out of the room. You walk up and try to physically touch her and to take away one of her rights, you better bet you're going to get assaulted. I think that is the difference between what we saw then and what we saw now, was a government physically suppressing people versus today is simply a disagreement in politics and issues.
I will, thank you. I just chime in here really quickly. I happen to have written a book called The Definitive Guide to the Declaration of Independence, a line-by-line exploration. It's coming out in March. This line is very important. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them, that's the people, under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. And then the Declaration goes through 28 specific grievances, to Tom Leonard's point, expressing all these violations of the colonists' rights. And the last one was that they spent 15 years going to the government of England and petitioning for those grievances to be stopped, and that they fell on deaf ears. So that's the only time that you would consider going to political violence, when there is a true tyranny or despotism. We have another question. Student. You don't want to be subjected to another Judge Warren question. Come on. Oh, we got somebody down here. All right, come on down.
What are realistic ways civilians can get their wants and needs expressed to the government? Like, how can we demand representation in the local government and the White House?
You know, I think there's nothing more powerful right now than organizing. I mean, I'm going to be very, very frank and very clear. You know, today it was brought up the government shutdowns in 2020 during COVID. I'm going to tell you right now, the governor did not start to change her tune and change her mind on some of these orders until thousands of people showed up at the Capitol and demanded change. I think that is the absolute best way to address your grievances right now, is by organizing and getting hundreds, thousands of people out there. I mean, you look at what we brought up Charlie Kirk several times today. I'm going to tell you, I'm just old enough to remember in 2002, when I was a young student at the University of Michigan, there was a gentleman, his name was David Horowitz. And he was a very, in some respects, controversial conservative figure. And I remember him showing up to campus to speak. And only about 200 students showed up. There were probably 36 police officers and about four bomb dogs, because they were worried somebody was going to do something violent on that day. There were a lot of students that were terrified. They were scared to show up to hear him speak. You look at how much things have changed in the last 20 years. Charlie Kirk was showing up to campuses, and he had thousands of conservative students willing to sit there and speak out. I don't think there's anything more powerful, again, than organizing to redress your grievances with your government.
Expressing yourself is not easy. It takes tremendous courage. It takes conviction. You have to be willing to experience the wrath of people who will tell you that you are wrong, that what you're saying is not right, it's impossible, shouldn't happen. Are you someone who is going to allow them to control you? Or do you have the strength and the conviction to keep going? Are you willing to do it persistently? Because persistence wears down resistance. And if there's something that you believe in, yeah, it's a crazy analogy. How do you get to the top of a mountain? Anybody know?
One step at a time.
That's right. You have a choice. After your first step, if your goal is to climb that mountain, you can stop, or you can keep going. You're going to experience all sorts of obstacles and things that get in the way, but if in fact you believe in it, be exceptional. Be a leader. Express yourself. When I said life isn't fair, create your own opportunities, because you can if you choose to. Last thing before I'll answer, because I think you'll really like this. How do you have your voice heard? There is a great speech that was given at commencement at, I believe it was University of Texas, by a Navy SEAL, okay? And forget about the fact that the guy's in the military, but I would encourage you to watch this speech. Go on YouTube. And he gives a speech at commencement about making your bed. Okay? And you can say, that's really silly, not worth watching. I challenge every single one of you, if you care about yourself, to look up that speech, to take the time, to listen, to a guy talk to college graduates about their future, about our country, about being heard, and it starts with something as simple as starting your day by making your bed.
I'm going to say there are 4 things, and some of these things the other gentleman already spoke about. Number 1, you can vote. You should absolutely vote and be informed when you vote. Second, you can organize. So whether that's, a political party or a civic group, or you have an issue that you want to address, do that. Third, you have the judicial system. That's another way. So you want to see change, sometimes you have to sue the government or other people or whatever else. And the fourth, remember when it comes to Governor Mason, you can maybe run for office. You can do that young. At the age of 18, you can. I'm not saying you should right away, but you can. I mean, I take a look at myself, I'm like in my early 40s, blah, blah, blah. My office is like a 2-minute walk from my home here in Birmingham. And if you ask me in January of this year, you want to run for Attorney General? I'd be like, no. I don't want to turn 2 minutes into almost an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours commuting to Lansing. But you know what? Enough people kept asking me, and I'm like, sure. And I'm not even talking about the pay cut. It's not about the money. It's about making a difference. And I would highly encourage you at the top, run for office or help to support candidates that you believe in and after you educate yourself. So those are the 4 ways I would say you can absolutely make a difference in Michigan and in America.
I'll just add a couple of things since it's Constitution Day. If you read the Constitution, you'll see that there's minimum qualifications to serve in the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, and the presidency. And there's no minimum qualifications, by the way, for Supreme Court justices. We can elect somebody from Tanzania and a 5-year-old, and they qualify. Very interesting. But there are no barriers to entry. You know what a barrier to entry is? Like if you're going to pay a ticket to get into a movie theater, or you want to be a hairdresser, you have to get a license. You want to be a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. There is no barrier to entry to getting involved in politics, in changing public policy. I can't tell you how many political meetings I've gone to where there's leaders of major groups. I have no idea what they do in their real life, right? In their other life. I just know they're amazing organizers. And then sometimes you find out, well, this person really doesn't have a job. They just, or something you wouldn't think would be all that prestigious. And then you have other people that are wealthy beyond, and you have no idea because it doesn't matter, because they're inspirational, they organize, they care, they're dedicated, they put their heart, sweat, and tears into it. And so that's true for you. All you folks right now, if you all got together and said, half of us are going to help Tom, the other half are going to help Kevin, they'd be the number 1 and number 2 candidates for governor. Not that Kevin's declared, but if he decided to, because that many people, young, energetic kids wanting to help, transformational, absolutely transformational. The power is in your hands. Next question. We're almost out of time. Come on. There we go. Come on.
So with the Charlie Kirk death, he stood for political activism, and I think he kind of resembled MLK and Abraham Lincoln, where they both stood for something and were killed. Following Abraham Lincoln and MLK, there was radical change in the government and things going around with slavery and black rights. What do you guys think the radical change will be in the world or the U.S. with Charlie Kirk's death?
Kevin, why don't you, Kevin, go first, because these guys keep going first.
Well, perhaps one is running for governor, the other one is running for governor. You're kind of down the totem pole being attorney general. So What I would say is, and again, this is not like an absolute prediction, I do think that we're going to see a change in how people speak. I really hope so. Because again, words have consequences, and people cannot light a fire and walk away, and we've been seeing that. I wrote an opinion piece that was published in a newspaper within the past week because there was a teacher in Flint, I won't give the name, doesn't really matter, I don't remember it right now, but after Charlie Kirk was killed, murdered really, said that, well, Donald Trump is Hitler. Like, you can't say stuff like that because you know what? If you say stuff like that, other people who perhaps are mentally ill or crazy will end up believing it and act on it. That's not right. So I think we're going to see a change in our tone, our tenor, and our politics. I also see that when it comes to, frankly, the future generation, I mean, you guys, it's interesting when you look at the data. I'm not advocating for one thing or the other. I'm just giving you the data. Kids today tend to be more conservative than prior generations. Kids today, when I say kids, I just don't mean under 18, but I'm actually going on like someone in their 20s. I shouldn't be calling them that, but there you go. They're more conservative in their orientation. They actually drink a lot less. They don't smoke a lot. I have a lot of faith in this generation right here. And in fact, if you even take a look at the 2024 election and you sort of take a look at the data, and again, it's fine, whoever people want to support, no problem at all, but the largest segment that actually supported Donald Trump was actually young folks, very young folks. So I have a lot of faith in the future. But again, I think we're going to go to a much better place when it comes to civility and also seeing kind of a return to, I would say, more traditional values.
You guys have a choice, okay? And I'm going to start with the silly analogy. There's a cat and there's a dog. And the dog says, I'm a cat. And the cat says, no, you're a dog. Does the cat have to accept the fact that the dog says it's a cat? Of course not. Now, it's okay if the dog wants to say, I'm a cat, even though it's a dog. And you don't have to be right when you have these conversations by making somebody else wrong. I challenge you to be factual. And to be factual, you have to be learned. And there's some folks that are sitting here today, and we're looking out, we have the luxury, that are snoozing, sleeping. Wake up, because you're missing out on something. You're missing out. It's an opportunity to learn. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but every day you have an opportunity to learn. You choose whether or not you accept that responsibility, whether or not you are willing to engage, and whether or not you are able to be better tonight when you go home. If you give up that right to hold to your beliefs, to be factual about why you believe it, you become a victim and you become controlled. And so I think, as Kevin said, and I suspect Tom will reflect similarly, that we're going to see people willing to engage in dialogue. And some people are going to be able to do it much better than others. Some people are going to get angry, and they're going to start MFing the other person, and they're going to want to throw punches, and they're going to spit and kick and scream. But they can't give up. Again, like I said, you climb a mountain one step at a time. Doesn't mean that it's easy, that there aren't obstacles. There were 36,000 requests to start turning point chapters in America within 4 days of this guy getting killed. 2 years ago, I saw Charlie Kirk every now and then on a blurb and didn't pay any attention. But I've actually, since he was shot, taken the time to sit and listen to his interactions. And I would challenge you guys, with what you see on YouTube or Facebook or X or video, who would you rather be in those dialogues? Who would you rather be in each question that's asked? Someone who responds like Charlie Kirk did, or someone who responds that has the microphone that's there to disagree? They both have the right to be who they say they are. That doesn't mean that they're right, and it doesn't mean that you have to say, okay.
Tom, we have like literally 2 minutes before the bell rings. So.
Okay, I think I can do this in 2 minutes. I'll tell you, I don't know what we're going to see, but I'll tell you what I hope we see. Okay, and I don't want to politicize this. I'm going to pick on both sides for just a minute, okay? I've been very clear, and I've said this out while I've been running for governor. I believe in November the Democrats lost because their vision was hatred of one person. I got involved in this race because I was looking at Republicans whose only vision was hatred of a sitting governor. You look at the state of our state right now. The only state that Michigan beat for population growth in the entire country the first 2 decades of the century was West Virginia. We are 49 out of 50 for unemployment. We are bottom 10 for income growth. Only 25% of our fourth graders can read at a proficient level. A quarter of our population suffers from some type of mental health issue, and half of them are not getting treatment because they're worried about the stigma that comes attached with suffering from a mental health issue. I would hope that going forward, that what we can see through Charlie Kirk's death, one thing about him, he may not have agreed with everything that he said, or he may not agree with anything that he said. He always had a vision. And what I would hope is that going forward, whether it be Republican, Democrat, Independent, every single person running for office will have a vision, and you all hold them to that.
God bless you. God bless America. Grab a pocket Constitution, Declaration, and a wristband if you don't have one yet.